Smeggy, we need music.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, that's enough.
I'll do
Welcome
that
to.
whole show.
I know you would. Welcome to Hit or Miss. I'm Night Strike. Tonight, I'm here with my co-pilot Smeggy,
How's it going, everybody?
and we are also joined by the wonderful G-Webs. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight.
Yep, thanks for the invite.
Send a couple other invites out. Maybe we'll get some more people in here. I doubt it. It's hit or miss, as the show says. Tonight,
Still think it's the best name ever.
I do too. I really do. But tonight, I'm handing over the reins to Smeggy, and Smeggy is going to run the show tonight. So, Smeggy, it's on you.
All right. Well, basically, I kind of had an idea for a themed show. I was talking about it a little bit the other day, and I figured, what the heck? We'll get some other people involved and see how it goes. So, my idea was basically talking about self-defense, shooting, and different scenarios where basically, like, would you shoot or, would you not? And I just want to put a disclaimer out front. We're not speaking legally because different states have all sorts of different stuff, and, that's just, we'll say it once and then we don't have to worry about it again. This is more like morally or personally, like where do you draw the line of defending yourself? So, I think, let's see. I don't know, we'd like to start off, I think something we all would agree on would be basically, and maybe we don't, but like someone breaks into your house and storms up into your bedroom and is like standing at the door with a gun. Like, I think most of us would probably shoot that person. That's not that controversial. So I'll say more in like a gray area. I'll just use the one I used the other day, and we'll try and think of some more. And if anyone's out in the chat and they, speak of something, we'll try and answer that also. But basically, we'll go with like you have an attached garage. Okay, let's say it's got a door that goes into the house or whatever, and there's someone in your garage rummaging through your stuff. Is that something that you would like go out into the garage, confront them, possibly shoot them, or would you like stay in your house and maybe say, okay, if they come through the door, like be at the ready, obviously call the cops, like, but if they come through the door, then I'm going to shoot them, but I'm not going to go put myself into harm's way and then, get in a confrontation with them. So what are your guys' thought on that one?
Well, from your standpoint, I know that you were like, well, we were talking about this last night, and honestly, from my point of view is, I'm not going to confront them until they walk inside the actual house. If they're in the garage, then yeah, if they want something that bad enough, let them call the cops, let them rummage through the garage. The minute they step into the house, that's when you get confrontational because, you're already in your house. You shouldn't have to retreat any further than your house. And they're invading your space and your privacy and your home, and they're going to do God knows what to you and your family, or they're going to steal God knows what. From the point they go from being in your garage to being in your house, that's when you need to worry. At least as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that basically. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Drew.
I don't agree at all with the setting of the question, because it's biased. It's like saying whatever that question is, like, are you going to continue to beat your wife or whatever? So that's number one. It's suggesting that we as individuals have some sort of all-powerful knowledge of the future, and somehow we can play chess with these theoretical future things. So I don't agree with the question, or the way that the question's asked, because it asks it in such a way that we're basically plotting how to deal with this one example, when I suggest that's not the way that it needs to be asked, or that's not the only way it can be asked. I would ask the same question in a way that says, I think the actual question was, if someone's rooting around in your garage, would you use lethal force?
Right. That's kind of what. Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
So I would ask the question, do you own the property in your garage? Do you have a right to be secure in your garage? And if not, then we don't have the right to lock our garages, and everything in our garages should have a nice list on the door if you're going to close the door, so that everyone else knows what they're welcome to take. But why, because it's in your garage, are you not allowed to why is that not your premises? Why is that not your home? And then if it is your home, why does someone get to steal things from your home? And then if they are able to steal things from your home, why do you have to, as the victim of that theft or that crime, why do you have to know they're only there with the intention of stealing your stuff? Is there some law that they abide by that says they're only going to steal your stuff and not hurt you? That they're only going to steal your stuff and not rape you? That they're only going to steal your stuff and not blind you so that you can't ID them in the future? That they're only going to steal your stuff and they're not going to come back? That they're only going to steal your stuff, they're not going to threaten you? Why should a victim have to have knowledge of the future on what those people are going to do? And again, if I'm wrong, if there's some law that they have to live by that says that they're not going to steal, or they're not going to hurt you if they're just there to steal, then how come we don't write laws that say you can't steal in that same place that they're obeying that law that they're not going to hurt you? So that's an awful lot of burden to put on the victim. I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but suggesting that as a victim, we have to, or we would strategize ahead of time when and we would and wouldn't use lethal force. I'd rather live in a society where the criminal has the fear of lethal force at all times for doing criminal activity.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I know we've kind of talked about this before, so I'm glad that you joined the chat. It just I don't know how to phrase it. I guess from my point of view, because I get what you're saying. You don't have the responsibility to know the future, and I'm not trying to say that I do know the future or anything. I'm just trying to think. I'm thinking out loud kind of thing here. But I guess my whole thing is I don't know if I'm comfortable putting myself in a situation where I'm in more danger. Like if I'm already in a safe place, I'm already in the house or whatever, and they're not in my immediate location yet. There's still a barrier between me and them, being the door to the garage. I don't know if I want to put myself in a dangerous situation and end up using lethal force if I don't necessarily have to.
Well, I don't want to be a victim if I don't have to, of anything. So we don't get to choose that, do we? Or do we? Do we get to choose if we're going to be a victim?
Well, no. I mean, I think, yeah, stuff happens to us that would make us a victim.
Right. So I think that I personally think it's not a valid way to look at the situation of a victim and a criminal, to look at it only from the perspective of time, of the past after the activity happens. Because I think if I asked the same individual, if I asked you and whoever else might be listening that agrees with this idea that somebody who's stealing your stuff doesn't deserve lethal implications, that if I ask those same people, if somebody broke into your house with the intent or the perceived intent to murder you or rape you or kidnap you, all the things that the state decides are justification for using lethal force, then that's appropriate, correct?
I do agree with that, yes, because I believe you're in, immediate danger of those types of things because they're in the same area as you. I mean, they're already in your house. They're sitting in the living room right next to you or whatever.
Right.
I lost track where I was going with that one, but I'm trying to do too many sidetrack things here, but I'll remember where I was at with that one, and I'll follow through on that one.
All right.
Right. It's just I know we went to this before, and you're taking this whole scenario thing based on a moral situation instead of following the law situation.
Well, yeah, definitely that. And I don't
No,
even know
I
if
guess
morals
what
the
I
right.
would, guess where I was asking, where I was going is that your question implies that after the fact you knew that the guy was just there to steal property, and I'm going to say guy because very few women break in to kill people and rape people and steal their shit. Although it happens, it's mostly a guy thing. So when some guy comes in and steals your stuff, you don't want to be the one that used lethal force if he was just there to get your VCR. That's awesome, and everyone wants to take that moral high ground, and it feels safe, and you feel like as a gun owner you can't be persecuted by the unwitting non-gun owner person who's not responsible for their own actions, who would accuse us as gun owners, people who are responsible for our own safety, and who are willing to take the steps necessary to ensure that we're responsible for our own safety. And that means way more than putting on the gun, as you guys have probably talked about in other chats. But if you guys are just taking that position because of some perceived uh, I guess perception from the anti-gunners, then we're doing ourselves a disservice because again, this person who breaks into our home, we don't know what they're there to do. So to suggest that they're there to just steal something, it absolutely 100% requires that you are looking at it from after the fact, from 2020 hindsight, as they say. You're looking at it from the perspective of this has already happened, and the worst case scenario could have happened, and these things could have happened. You got to look at it from the point of view of the person who has not decided to engage in a criminal activity, the victim, who's minding their business, who's caught off guard, caught by surprise, has someone in their house that they're not familiar with, doing stuff that they haven't authorized, they weren't prepared for it. So this bad guy decides to be a bad guy, has a lot of practice being a bad guy, knows how regular people react to bad guys intruding into their homes, has all this advantage, and we're going to give that son of a bitch, I'm sorry if I'm using foul language in your chat, but we're going to give this criminal, a person whose job is knowing how the social norms work, we're going to allow them to push the boundaries of the social norms to the point where lethal force is going to be we're going to hesitate to use lethal force as law-abiding gun owners who are responsible for our own security and the security of our families and our communities, which is also of bearing interest in this whole discussion. I don't give a shit if I get robbed. I give a shit if a little old lady gets robbed. And if I'm going to sit here and dilly-dally whether some guy's going to get lethal force for robbing my VCR, that means he can take anything he wants from that little old lady. Anything, anytime. So when we're talking about us, we have to first remove ourselves from the past perception of a potential situation that we're theorizing on, and take our 21-year-old male bodies, which even if we're older than 21, we all remember being 21 and being completely vital. We got to take our brains out of that and think of our community, which is a bunch of little old ladies and old men, people with handicaps, people with temporary injuries, all kinds of people who have no interest in protecting themselves. Those are the actual victims of these predators. And if we are going to, the people who are probably having this discussion, I'm assuming, are the people that consider themselves sheepdogs, the people would fucking put the teeth on to take care of the wolves. If we're going to check ourselves and not bite wolves because they might be pointed the wrong fucking way in our flock, then we're doing ourselves a disservice, and I won't participate in that discussion. Now, I'm not saying that this is a flawed concept for a chat. I'm in here because, and I've got all kinds of other stuff to do. I'm in here because it's the super valid thing, but that's my position on it, that we are second-guessing ourselves to extinction.
Right, right. I'm glad you're bringing this up. You know, this isn't on one side. You know, there's many different sides to this. It's not just, you know, one angle or the other. You know, but I'll let you know this. I don't own a garage. I just have a carport. So, you know, if anyone steals anything off of my carport, you know,
If they step foot onto your property, there should be lethal implications, and if there's not, then the society has allowed them to take anything from your property.
right.
I
So
guess
when someone was to ask me, would you shoot somebody over a VCR? I would ask them, why do you have a concept of owning property, comrade communist? If you think that they're not, if you think that they're entitled to my VCR because they're deemed not to rape me or kill me in the process of taking my VCR, then why do we own property? Give me the money in your wallet as show of you know, some real life show of that you're resolved that you actually hold that position. Because basically what you're saying is anybody who comes into your house to take anything you can replace and you're willing to replace, and they should have no fear of well,
and that's
No fear of repercussion.
lethal repercussion. Sorry.
Right.
right. So, and I will agree with you on that point, especially with the word you keep using of coming in your house. I agree with you on that because you don't know that they're just there for the VCR. Like you did a very good job explaining all that. You know you don't know what their intentions are. You don't know the future. Blah 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 whatever. But I guess my whole point, and this is why I started with kind of a gray area, is that they're not. I don't believe they're in your home yet, and that's maybe we'll change it a little bit and say it's the shed in the backyard. So now they're 50 feet away from your back door, and they're rummaging through your shed. And
Okay,
me personally,
so if you're going to give me that scenario, I hear you, and it's super morally strong or feels good to say that you're not going to shoot somebody over going in your shed. However, what if the guy is going through your shed to find a golf club to break the window to kill you? So
then he gets
that's
shot when he
awesome.
breaks
But
the window.
well, then okay, you're a 21-year-old guy thinking about resisting borders. Now let's talk about a little old lady who has to decide that some guy just walked into her yard, and should she call the cops or should she take action? Then he breaks into her shed, and she's like, well, it's just my shed. I can replace everything in there, and I don't want to take a life. Well, he's fiddling with the barbecue on the back porch. You know, well, okay, maybe he's looking for a key, but maybe he is just hungry, and what is it my place to take a life? And you could say she should call the cops. Great. So now we're going to burden the police with every time somebody's rooting around somebody's yard. Again, that criminal who knows the system and knows the social norms, he's able to take that membrane between crossing the line and not. And he's knows how to soften that membrane and push it as far as he can push it. And he's got 16 different ways to explain why he's rooting around her barbecue. And you want her to call the police and overburden the police officer who should be out there stopping an actual crime, maybe writing up the death warrant or the death report on this guy when she takes care of him, which should have been happening. So no, I'm thinking that guy should hesitate before he steps foot in that little old lady's yard. Is this a little old lady with a shotgun, or is this a little old lady who ain't with a shotgun, or is this an old guy with a shotgun, or is this not? Maybe I should go someplace else and decide to bully people like Europe, where they don't even have real guns. See, and then all the criminals go to Europe, and we become a peaceful country without the criminals here. So I guess
maybe the Earth is
they're out
flat.
in the what's stopping them? My garages have always been attached to my homes. My carports have always been attached either through a door or through a walkway to my home. So yeah, he's rooting around your garage or your outside. Number one, does he own that property? Can he just take your car because you're not in it and it's not near you and you have a place to retreat? Or do you own that car? And does that guy not have a right to root around your car? I guess your mic is not working down. And then like I said, there's steps away from the front door. So he's decided the cigarettes aren't in the car. I'm going to go inside and find him. I'm going to kill anybody who gets in my way. how do we know if that's going through that guy's mind? So I guess that's where my hesitation is on following the theoretical like scenarios of when to use lethal force. I would say, that we have laws that say when lethal force is justified, and you don't get to say you didn't know the laws. You have to oblige by those laws, or else you're a murderer. And most of us that carry firearms every day, go beyond what's necessary or required to learn those scenarios. But I think the bad guys don't, and they go, just because of their jobs or whatever you call it, their occupations, they learn how to push that the other way, and that's given them too much advantage by second guessing on our end.
Is my mic working?
Yeah.
Okay. I think I heard the majority of what G was saying. I didn't get to catch all of it, but probably about 90% of it. I realize I'm kind of late to the show, so to speak, but briefly, and this may have already been said, but I'm actually taking a class just simply on this issue plus other things. It's a non-shooting class with Masad Ayub for these reasons. But I can share with you my understanding of the moment, subject to change, or will. But currently my understanding and philosophy is that our reaction should be progressive, as the criminal's action is progressive. So if somebody's rooting around in the back shed, the first thing you do is you call 911. Okay, to at least get them in process. They're not going to be there if the guy charges the house in the next 30 seconds, but at least it's in process. Two.
Did I miss the party?
Whoa, who let Yankee in here?
The second is to make sure I'm prepared in case that next step from the shed is towards my home. And that means I have some way to protect me and my family. I'm not out there progressing a situation. I'm not out there making something bigger than it might ever have been, because I cannot predict the future. But if the future means him coming to my door and either trying to bust it in or breaking through the window, I will be prepared for that eventuality. But I will not actively encourage that situation to occur. I'd much rather, at the end of the night, never fire a shot and have them arrest a guy who's now down in jail and has to get bailed out, than have to explain where my bullet went.
Okay.
That's it. Anyway, progressive rather than one situation. It's not a cookie cutter thing. It's very much dependent on. It's not just what he did. Is it one guy? Is it two guys?
Could be a whole bunch of guys.
Exactly. There's a lot of factors in that. That's why you can never have a cookie cutter sort of. As much as we think we can put in all the variables, we will never have them. Am I tired? Am I awake? I mean, even that plays a role.
All right.
Because I may not hear things properly.
Smegs, bring everyone back up to speed on the topics and scenarios tonight.
All right. Well, basically, I mean, the topic was just, the original idea was kind of speaking of different scenarios of using lethal force. And that's, Dano kind of summarized my personal opinion on it, and part of the reason I did this is because I am open to different ways of thinking. G-Webs has a different way of thinking than I do, and I'll take that into consideration, but it was more so just feeling like personally where my limits are of when to use lethal force, when not to. And I kind of started with just, guy in the garage rooting through the stuff, what do you do? Then that moved out, guy in the shed, same thing, what do you do? So I don't know if Yankee has an opinion on that. We'll kind of hear his answer. But I've kind of been derailed from what G-Web said, because now I'm thinking all sorts of other crazy stuff.
I think my position's pretty well known. I will not shoot over property. I will only shoot when I think someone is a reasonable threat to myself or my family. If someone's out in my shed, rummaging through my shed, unless there's something in that shed that's of extreme value, which if it is, it shouldn't be in your shed. I'm not going to go out and even confront the guy. Probably, if I decided I was going to, I'd have to. That would be on me to make sure that I'm in a situation where it isn't going to escalate quickly without my control. I'm just going to call the police. So
how does that help society, though?
It's not my job to help society. It's the police's job to help society. And how am I helping society by going out and even shooting someone that, for all I know, may not be a danger to society? They just might be in a bad place. So
there you go. So, Yankee, look at all those assumptions. So how does that help society?
Well, I think it's a greater assumption to always, it's better to always make an assumption and err in the side of caution than it is to make an assumption like, well, I'm going to assume because some guy's rummaging through my shed that there's 10 of them and that they're armed, because a jury's not going to consider that a reasonable assumption. So I'm never going to make that assumption.
Yeah, stepping outside your home is
you're taking it to a specific situation, and that's why I asked.
Safety inside the home to a position of possibly more danger outside the home, and that was the homeowner's choice.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say I'm going to call the police on every little sound. Like, if I hear something outside and I'm like, what is that? I'm not going to cower in my house and call the police because a raccoon just knocked my garbage can over. I'm going to go out and I'm going to look. And then if someone is doing something wrong and I'm in a face-to-face confrontation with them and they do something that causes the situation to escalate, I would never, and if that was someone else that made those same choices that I would make, I would never say, okay, this guy's in the wrong, because if he'd have just stayed in his house, the guy would have just stolen his toolbox and left. I'll say he went out to investigate a noise. He wasn't committing a crime. The guy committing the crime created a circumstance where things escalated to lethal force. It's still on the guy committing the crime. But if I'm aware of something happening, like I can see out the back window someone's rummaging through my storage building, I'm able to make the decision that he's not in my house, he's not threatening me, he's presumably, a reasonable assumption would be he wants to steal something and get away with it. I'm going to say, okay, I can now call the police and say, hey, there's some guy rummaging around in my building. There's no, hypothetical I'm dealing with now. I'm dealing with the reality of someone's messing around in my storage building. Nothing of extreme value is there. There's nothing worth going out there and getting in a fight over and potentially going to prison over if a jury thinks I was unjust. So that's how I would react.
Okay, so let me finish this time. Everything I asked you before, you just reiterated, and every time you say it, you have to put the word I in there. So what I said was, I asked is, how does that benefit society? You said, how does my actions as an individual in this scenario benefit society? I guess what I should have said is, how does that scenario benefit society? And it doesn't, because in the way that you extrapolated on it, you're talking about you're not going to call the police for every bump in the night, that you're going to go out and investigate. So I question, are you going to, and I'm not asking for an answer, but a question to everyone, you're going to go out and investigate a bump in the night. Are you going to go out there armed, question mark, without needed an answer? Because if you're going to allow us a scenario, or the way that we've got it now in most states, where if you go outside with a firearm and this guy was just trying to do property and something happens and you get arrested for yelling at him and you've got a firearm, now you're at fault because you were out there hunting this guy. That's a ridiculous situation to put a victim into. So I'm saying, how does it benefit society to be in a situation where the criminal has all the advantage up to and until the point where he actually lays hands on the victim? So I say that in a society where the criminal has the fear of lethal force in his actions, no matter what, and it's not biased towards the criminal, but instead it's biased, or at least even, so that the victim doesn't have to defend themselves, then we live in a better, safer society for everyone, because you have the ability to go out.
I could easily say that could go the other way around.
Your carport. Little old ladies don't have the ability to go out and check their carport, and I don't think it's the police's task to go out and investigate every raccoon in a carport.
Well, no one's saying someone can't go out armed. And also we're saying that if you react justly to what's going on, that's one thing. But to give someone carte blanche of they're on your property so you can shoot them, no, I will never agree with that, because there would be too many situations where that is not just. That's not just. Anytime anyone takes a life, there should be some scrutiny of why they took that life. And there should be more scrutiny of why you took someone's
about what
life.
I said even suggests that
Well, you're saying that why should all the advantages be on the criminal? I don't think the criminal has an advantage. The criminal, if he gets caught, is going to go to jail.
now. The criminals have all the advantage right
Well,
now.
what advantage does he have?
He can walk into your property, rummage around your shed, walk into your house, rummage around your barbecue, and if you do anything, then you're attacking someone who's...
No, that's not true. The vast majority of home defenses never even involve someone being charged. So that's not true. They do not. Once they're on your property, they have an assumption of that they're doing something wrong. Now, are they doing something wrong enough for you to kill them? That's a question a jury will probably have to decide later if you do kill them. No one's saying they were in the right or that you couldn't defend yourself if they're on your property, but you can't go out and assassinate someone just because they're on your property.
Well, that's taking it to a ridiculous extreme
It's
example.
not a ridiculous extreme. That's an example you'll have to face in court. In court, if you shoot them, even if they pick up a tire iron and come at you, you'll have to say, they picked up a tire iron and came at me, and the jury will go, okay, well, that makes sense. That was the reason for you to kill them. Just, he was in my shed, so I popped him in the back of the head from 20 feet away. That's going to be an assassination, and that's not going to stand up in court.
No, that's not what we're talking about here. So again, you have to take ridiculous extreme examples to justify your position.
But that's not ridiculous extreme examples. That's what you're going to face in court. If you kill someone, if you shoot someone...
Seriously, you talked all that time, and then I tried to answer, and then you cut me off and continue to reiterate the same.
Well, what part of that's a ridiculous extreme, though?
Well, we're trying to...
The part where you suggested if anyone said that anything that I said it was going to condone assassinations. What I'm suggesting is there needs to be an environment where the criminal has lethal repercussions. That doesn't mean they always have
lethal repercussions for what?
Always in there.
Lethal repercussions for
an
what?
Obligation to shoot someone. I said that right now the way that most
wait a second. Wait, lethal repercussions for what? Theft?
For property, being on other people's property.
No, I won't agree that there's lethal repercussions for stealing a lawnmower or a wrench.
Because you can only look at it from after the fact, and the guy only took a lawnmower.
No, I'm not looking at it for after the fact.
The guy only took a toaster. You can't
I'm not looking at it for after the fact. I'm looking at it.
They don't know if they're there to rape them or kill them or take a toaster. It's ridiculous.
Okay, you're going to go in front of a jury of 9 people, and you're going to say, because this guy was in my shed stealing a wrench, I thought he was here to rape me. You know what they're going to say to you? You're a jerk, and you're going to prison, because that is not a just reason to assume someone is there to rape you. If he comes in your house, that's one thing.
That has open access to, the criminals have open access to anything on your property that isn't inside of your home.
No, they don't. They can go to jail for stealing things off your. They can go to prison for stealing off your property. They do not get a death sentence from stealing your lawnmower. I do not agree with that.
I said they have the potential. So again, you have to jump to the criminal with a lawnmower in order to justify your position. You can't even listen to the concept that right now
you're not understanding. I'm saying that potential is still there, but you have to justly feel threatened. It can't be just because they're stealing. You have to be just in your failing of being threatened. All the laws are written that you have to have a reasonable fear.
We have
a reasonable explanation.
The exact same thing we're talking about here. At some point in this country, at certain states, you as the victim of an attack had to prove that you couldn't escape. You had no other option than to use lethal force. And stand your ground laws and castle doctrine were put in place where we're basically reiterating the laws so that the victim is not guilty until...
No, castle doctrines do not do that. They do not take the level of responsibility away from you. They still say you have to have been in reasonable fear. And it just defines what reasonable...
What they do is say that you're not a murderer until you're proven innocent. They say that you're innocent until proven guilty.
Well, that's just the way it would go anyway. If you kill someone that's on your home, no matter what circumstance you killed them under, if they decide to press charges, like if the police go, I don't think this guy was a threat to you in your storage building, you're going to go in and a jury is going to decide whether you're guilty or not. And they're going to decide that on whether they thought you were reasonable shooting someone over theft from an outbuilding on your house. That's not in a ridiculous extreme. That's something you're going to have to face, even if he did pick up a wrench and threaten you.
On that criminal who stole the toaster and got killed. That's all you can think about. You can't think about the environment that you're creating with that position.
No, what I'm not thinking
has to make a decision on this. This guy coming in just for
what I'm not thinking about. Here's what I'm not thinking about, G-Webs. What I'm not thinking about is that I'm so fearful that I'm going to assume that every petty criminal is a terrorist coming to kill me and rape my family. I'm not going to be in that mindset ever.
So you're going to suggest that every little old lady now cannot even question her own concern.
I didn't say that at all, because I'm not a little old lady. If a little old lady's in a situation and she is threatened, I can say, hey, a 90-pound, 85-year-old woman can be feel legitimately threatened just because there was a man there on her property. And
Exactly.
you can
And
say,
that's what I'm trying to say, is that if we're going to have this scenario, what, we're only answering for ourselves ever? Like it's always an able and resourceful male of age? It can't be, we can't answer from everyone's perspective. So again, we're going to continue to berate people for this concept that no property can ever have lethal or no property theft can ever have
no, I
lethal
still will not
repercussions.
say, no, I will still not say that you can shoot someone over property. I will say
Okay,
that
hold
little
on.
old lady can
Hold on.
shoot someone because she felt threatened, even though that guy was just there to steal property. That
Hold
death
on.
sentence isn't for stealing the property.
Well,
That death sentence
we
is
agree
because
on
she felt
that, and that's
threatened.
what I'm trying to get across.
Are you talking about morally or legally?
Hold on. What if the perpetrator, as we'll call him, wasn't
What time?
killed but just
Where?
injured?
At his house? I don't know what time yet.
Okay, yeah, just let me know.
Okay, great.
Oops, sorry, I thought I was.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought I
I
was
was
muted.
just gonna. Are you talking about morally or legally, Yankee?
I'm talking both. I don't think that there
Okay.
should legally be a death sentence for theft.
Because
However,
morally,
that doesn't mean.
understand how
What
you
if they're only injured? What if they are only injured but they aren't
No,
killed?
actually, yeah. Well, I'm not a firm believer in shoot to injure. Period. So that's a different discussion.
Yeah.
But
How can you even regulate
Well,
that?
it's my discussion, so
what I'm going to say is legally there should be no death sentence for property. You should not have a get out of jail free card, like I said, just because someone was stealing from you, because you enact a death sentence on someone for stealing your lawnmower. I will never agree with that. I would think.
But some
there-
states do.
No one's
yeah,
asking.
and I don't.
for that.
No, they don't really have that. That's not true.
Exactly,
That's
they
a
don't
mis-
have that.
That's
and
a
that's why you're
misrepresentation of
misrepresenting.
castle doctrine. Castle
It's
doctrine
not
doesn't.
castle doctrine at all. That has nothing to do with castle doctrine. But
Well,
it
I'm
is
just saying some
misrepresenting
people.
the Texas property.
But even the Texas property law doesn't state you can just shoot anybody anytime over stealing
No.
property.
No, it doesn't. But it makes it very a difficult decision for someone, literally a lethal decision, if they
Yeah.
decide they want to go and steal.
It basically
from someone.
says.
And
It
that's what I
basically
want.
says if you steal under these circumstances, like you're on someone's property, it's after dark, etc., that person is then probably justified in feeling, hey, I'm in a dark situation. There's someone on my property that doesn't belong here. Therefore, it's reasonable for me to assume that I'm threatened, because it does have things in there about like what time of day it is, etc. And that makes sense. That at night, you don't know what's going on. But if you middle of the day, you call the police and go, hey, there's someone in my shed, even in Texas, and then you walk outside and shoot them, you're probably going to be charged. Castle doctrine does not. That's one way that the far left misrepresents castle doctrines, as if it's a license to murder. It isn't. There's still criteria you have to meet before you're safe. All castle doctrine does is establish a system of determining whether you were reasonable in assuming that you were threatened.
So it doesn't matter the fact that they're trespassing on your property that you own. As long as they're not in your house, there's nothing you can do, right?
No, that's not the case at all. There's
That's
lots
what
of
you're
things you
saying.
can
That's
do.
what you're saying. As
No,
long
that
as they're
isn't.
not
When
in
did
your
I
house,
ever-
you
No,
can't
when
do
did I
anything.
ever say that? When did I ever say there's nothing you can do? I said myself I would go out if I heard a noise and check. And then if things escalated, they'd escalate. If I can see what's going on, it's broad daylight, someone's in my shed rummaging around, I'm going to call the police, get them arrested. I'm not going to shoot someone over it. If you're going to try to justify shooting someone over it just because you feel like it's not manly to go out and confront them, I'm never going to agree with that.
No one's suggesting that. You're the one bringing all that up out of nowhere.
Exactly.
But that's part of this discussion. You're going to have to assume that. You have to look at it from every angle. You have to look at the people that shouldn't be charged, but you also have to look at the people that should be charged.
Yeah, and no part of anything that we've said, except for your assumptions, jumps to some reality where people are taken off of any responsibility for a murder. So
Well, then what problem is there with anything I said then?
jump to a murder and suggest that our position is encouraging and then given carte blanche to any murder, which is of course ridiculous. I would assume
What part
that
of what I said is?
there's going to be justification needed for any lethal force.
Then what part of what I said is that you have a problem with then?
Well, like when you said
The
shoot him in
part
the
that
back of the
you
head.
totally understand.
But
that-
wait a second.
that
That's
the-
not
the-
even.
the
That's
left-
not even a hypothetical. That's a real situation in Ohio where a guy called the police that someone was stealing from his garage, and he went out and he shot the guy from the back of the head from outside the garage. That is a
We're
real
talking
story.
about circumstances which the host did not present. We're talking about a very specific circumstance.
He said if someone was stealing from your storage building, that's about the same thing. So you can't just go out and suddenly think I'm justified in using lethal force legally over property, because you can't. That's not true.
My position is that Texas has the lethal force to defend property. Okay, that's all it says. It doesn't.
No, it
doesn't
lists
say-
circumstances.
Let me finish. It doesn't say without impunity you can always get away with murder by just saying that it was your property. We can agree that there's some basis in justification needed for lethal force. However, a criminal in Texas knows that there's lethal implications for stealing property. My suggestion is we would live in a much safer society in the entire country if there were lethal implications for stealing property that didn't involve the victim, the person who was required to use lethal force to defend themselves
well, let me ask you this question.
Defending their property, that they would be at a disadvantage in court because there's some perception that a property criminal is somehow above the lethal criminal level, and they can't be. No one could assume that a criminal who's there for property could ever do anything else.
No one is forced to assume that. There are circumstances where even if a guy is there just to steal your VCR, there's going to be nothing wrong on you assuming, hey, he's in my house, even if he had no intention of stealing your VCR, and his family can come to court and go, look, he's stolen 120 VCRs in the last 20 years, and he's never harmed anyone. That's irrelevant. You had the right to feel threatened. That doesn't mean, however, though, that I believe that the best deterrent to anything is severe punishment for something that doesn't deserve severe punishment. That's like saying, hey, I'm kind of okay with Iran cutting off people's hands if they steal a candy bar because, hey, that's a great deterrent.
I don't believe that the state should be doing anything, but I believe that an armed populace and a populace that knows that it is going to be innocent until proven guilty for lethal protection of property. I think that is a deterrent to crime that doesn't.
Well, legally, you are still innocent till proven guilty. Period. Especially on your own property, and especially under circumstances where you would reasonably feel threatened. Now, if your problem is with the court system, that's different, because that's saying, hey, how do we get these judges that don't, or not judges, but juries that aren't instructed in ways that are, completely contrary to the law, which happens quite a bit.
Right. All right. Can we switch this up a bit now? You guys mind?
Go for it.
Well, Sean was going to talk about it because he actually lives in Texas. We've been citing Texas.
Sean, we've been citing Texas. Sean, please tell us how it is in Texas.
Somebody. My mic's working, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Tell us how it is.
Yeah, I mean, castle doctrine here in Texas, there are stipulations, and in, let me see, I got the actual Texas Penal Code 932. It does not cover actual intellectual property, anything physical, but less than 2 weeks ago, I actually did awake to a noise. I did walk out to my backyard. I did find someone standing in my backyard. Now, it was dark. I didn't want to turn on the light and startle him because I couldn't see what was in his hand. And yes, I did draw down on him. But I think that, as a property owner, is your legal right. I think at any situation, if you can't tell what's in the hands of the person that you're coming up to, you have the right to draw down on them. And then you have to personally make a judgment call for lethal force. In my case, I could tell it was like a teenaged kid, and I could tell by his body language, and I could tell by the puddle of piss that was forming between his legs that he wasn't a threat. So all I told him is, get out of my property. This is your only warning. I'm not going to repeat myself. And the guy literally leapt over the fence without touching a single board.
Well, that's actually a perfect example to ask a couple of questions, both legally and morally. In that situation, legally, you would be totally justified in drawing down on that person.
Right, and the thing that he had in his hand that he dropped was a can of spray paint, because people have been tagging fences in my neighborhood lately, and he was one of them.
And obviously tagging fences isn't a death penalty sentence. So, right. But if you had shot him, if you had actually fired upon him, chances are you would have been justified legally in doing so. It was dark.
Yeah,
I would have. Property. He had something in his hand. All those things should be presented to a jury, and anybody that has a reasonable mind and has presented the law in the way that it's actually written would say, yeah, it was dark. This was this guy's yard. It was the middle of the night. This was someone that shouldn't be in his yard. They had something in their hand. He was legally justified in using lethal force. Now, you'd probably agree with that, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if he was in my shed, honestly, if I couldn't see both hands, I'd be a lot more, I guess, short-tempered, I guess is a good way to put it. You know, I'd want to see his hands.
Now, let's see it two different ways now here. Let's also look at the moral side of that. If you had walked out, shot him, then saw it was a 13-year-old with a spray can in his hand, do you think you would have felt morally right in that shooting?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I still would have had to make a phone call. I'd have to explain, you know, this person was in my yard. I couldn't see what was in his hands. You know, he was rather tall. I mean, he was about almost 6 feet tall, and I'm only 6'2". So, you know, I can't tell the age of a person from a shadow, especially, you know, 30 feet away.
And now let's change the story a little bit. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. There's a teenager in your backyard with a spray can in his hand. Do you go out and draw on him?
You know, you just call the cops and wait.
I would probably at least have my
hand
hand on my gun, but I don't know if I'd actually draw down on him.
I mean, you go out there, it may go from a can of spray to all of a sudden he's got a knife.
Yeah, well, that's why you maintain
I mean, you're escalating the situation for no reason.
Well,
This
and
is
I think
true,
you
but
have
I
the
mean, I
right
have 30 feet to figure out if he's coming at me or not, too.
Yeah, and you have a right to confront. Confrontation is not escalation. If he's out there with a spray can in your yard, you have a right to say, go open your back door and say, hey,
you're
kid.
exposing yourself to potential harm for no reason.
But there's no law against that.
The house
You're still legally within every right to do that.
Oh, right. Legally you are. I'm just saying it's not the safe move.
No, but saying it's middle of the day, you can see it's a 13-year-old with a spray can, would you even be legally justified on holding him at gunpoint at that part? No, you wouldn't be.
Maybe he's not spraying. Maybe he's sniffing.
No, in the middle of the day situation, it would definitely
if he's got a lighter, that could be a flamethrower.
You know, I would have my hand on my hip, but I don't think I would draw down. I'd be like, hey, what are you doing here? You know, what's that in your hand?
Because in that situation, even in Texas, lethal force would not be legal.
Yeah, I mean, my life wasn't under any threat. You know, it's just.
And they would say, hey, it was daylight. You could see who it was. You should have been able to see what was in his hand. You know, unless you're blind, you know, have special circumstances, you were not reasonable in assuming you were threatened in that situation.
Right.
So a lot of people, they misrepresent these laws and say, hey, if there's a 12-year-old in your yard at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, these people can just go out and shoot them in the head, and they're, you know, off the hook because Castle Doctrine, and that's not what Castle Doctrine is.
A lot of people do misuse and misinterpret Castle Doctrine. For instance, I got an education today a bit too when it came to having a firearm in the car, and I actually used your example, how you have your lockbox in you know, it's out of view. I've seen people who have holsters attached to the bottom parts of their center consoles. So technically from the window, it is still sort of out of view, but Texas had its first case of a right-to-carry individual getting arrested because his gun was actually in the cup holder below or above where his holster was.
I guess that's a don't be stupid law.
It was pretty stupid, and his argument was, I thought Castle Doctrine would protect me from that kind of thing because I'm in my own vehicle, and there's actually a secondary law that says that no, you can't do that. It's a Motorist Protection Act or something like that, and it's supposed to be completely out of view. So
yeah, people misrepresent Castle Doctrine. All basically Castle Doctrine does is it takes away your duty to retreat. And it takes away your liability if it's a 50-50 situation. Like, you know, if it's, you know, could have been justified, could not have been justified, it puts the weight of burden on proving that it wasn't justified, which is the way the system is supposed to be anyway. And it takes away your duty to retreat, because a lot of places have a duty. They say, you know, if you go out and confront someone and he pulls out a tire iron and chases you, if you didn't run as far as you can, as fast as you can before you finally turned and shot, when you couldn't go another step, then you weren't justified. And that's ridiculous. A duty to retreat is stupid.
Well, the reason they did the Castle Doctrine here in Arizona is because if you were, let's say, in your business and somebody broke into your house and you needed to defend yourself lethally, then a lot of times the police were required to arrest you. You were a murderer, so you were basically guilty until proven innocent. And as the victim, that was something that you didn't bring upon yourself. You were minding your business, literally. So that's the way I describe it, is it takes away the duty of the victim to prove their innocence. Instead, it like you say, there's always going to be responsibility for any actions, but of course a lethal, result. So you're always going to have to prove or show there was justification. But in the lack of justification, you're a murderer. But the like you're saying, you're not bound to do everything within your means to not use lethal force, especially when a situation is pushed upon you, presented to you without your.
Yeah, because there's some states where it's stupid. Like if you had his situation where he went out in the middle of the night, there was a grown man in his backyard with something in their hand, and they walked towards him in the dark, and he shot them, that state would go, hey, that wasn't a gun in his hand, it was a staple gun. And because you didn't take that time to see that it wasn't a gun, you're at fault, which is ridiculous.
If that was the situation where the guy actually came at me, I'm fairly certain that I'd still be detained, my weapon would still be taken. Then my testimony would have to be I'd have to wait until I got my day in court, because the only two people who were there are me and a dead guy. So
well, and if it even came to a day in court, because a district attorney is going to say it was dark, the guy was in his yard, and there's only two sides of this story. The guy that says the guy came at him and the dead guy, am I going to win this case? No charges. And that's where the castle doctrines come in to be great tools, because it makes district attorneys, instead of trying to just get another notch on their belt by throwing an innocent person in jail who may have done something morally questionable but didn't do anything legally questionable into prison, by throwing them in prison and getting a notch on their belt, it makes them have to think, am I going to be another negative on my record because I charged an innocent person and lost because of castle doctrine? So it makes them think a little bit more before they put the burden on people that defended themselves.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't think our indictment rates here in Texas are very high for defending your property, but I'm sure everyone still gets held and questioned and
but like G-Webs was saying, there are states where if you shoot someone, you're automatically the bad guy, no matter what they were doing, pretty much.
New York.
Yeah, and I do believe that if you take someone's life, that does require scrutiny. That act will always require scrutiny, even if it was 100%. If a terrorist, ran down the street firing at people and then ran in your front door and shot you, I would still say, ran in your front door with his gun and you shot him and killed him, I would still want to know the circumstances for why you shot and killed that guy. Once I heard the circumstances of, he shot and killed that guy because he was a terrorist that ran in his house, that's great, that's fine. But there's always going to be scrutiny when you take someone's life, even when you're 100% justified.
Okay. I'd agree to that, because I think that there's groups of people that, even though they're legal carriers, they're those I wish a motherfucker would type people, so they're looking for an opportunity to do that.
I've got a question for you guys. We've already heard Sean's position, because he had a situation. Do either of you have a similar situation that you'd like to share that involves this conversation?
Well, I got involved in a potential carjacking one time, where I was pulled up off the interstate to a red light in Birmingham, Alabama, and like an idiot, I did get close to the car in front of me. I was young and stupid. And as soon as I pulled up to them, the light turned green. They didn't go. Another car pulled up right behind us on our bumper, and people got out of both cars. And, I was driving a brand new Honda CRX at the time, I believe is what I had. And, that back then was kind of a hot little car, so I'm sure they wanted to steal our car. And they walked up to the door. They had, weapons in their hands, like ball bats, that kind of weapon. And I had a Taurus 357 Magnum revolver between the seats. I pulled it up, and said, I will shoot your blank ass through this window. And they ran. They jumped in the cars. The back car took off. The front car took off, stalled in the intersection. The guys got out and ran. Now, would I have been justified in shooting as soon as they came up to the car? Probably legally, but I didn't, because I didn't think I had to at that point, because there was still a layer of glass between me and them at that point.
But what made them run away? The knowledge that because they're not stupid.
That I was going to shoot them.
Going to be a bad criminal, a dumb criminal, but they had a knowledge that they were outside of their realm of plausibility and totally in your realm of justifiability.
Yeah,
so
they knew I could shoot them.
They figured out.
They realized they brought bats to a gunfight and they left.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
and
all.
That was back in a time where very few people had concealed.
So that the bad guys don't even start picking up that.
And that was back in the late 80s, I do believe, early 90s, so that's back when very few people had concealed carry permits. It was so rare to see anybody that carried concealed. So they probably stole cars before. They'd never run into that. It doesn't happen that often to them.
Yeah, and you know what I'm saying? All that needs to happen is, 3 or 4 times, and they're like, there's probably better things to do. We can go steal cats and ransom them back or something.
If they were first timers, it only took the one time.
Yeah, we're not. I don't think they were all first timers. Although the one guy, the car that stalled in the intersection, the way they caught the guys is it was his mother's car that he stole from his mother, who she had reported stolen.
Wow.
So he stole his mom's car to go out and carjack people. So
Yeah. That's,
Well, he was
that's
just
messed up.
borrowing his mom's car, because once he stole your car, he'd give her car back.
Right.
So Taurus
was
revolvers
just
are
a
not
loan.
worthless because you usually don't have to fire, so they will still save you.
That's good news for all you Keltec people out there.
Or your high point people.
A high point will at least work once.
What about the Jimenez?
Judgment call.
Then you're taking them with you. That's kind of what Jimenez Adam is.
Yeah, you're taking them
It's
with
like
you.
holding a grenade up and pulling the pin out. It's like if you come near me, I'll let go.
Well, you've got more experience in that area than we do. All right, Smegs, do you have another scenario you want to run by us?
I don't know.
You sure?
Not really. We've been going for an hour. That's
All right. I guess I'm gonna do a DPG. Smegs, do you want to pick out the person?
ugh, no.
You want me to do it?
Box on the right.
All right. I'm just gonna pick someone out there on gun channels that's watching the show, and do that. I haven't seen this guy before. Smith and Wesson. You're winning the patch today. So go to gunchannels.com/DPG, sign up, and get a patch. All right. I think now's about the time to call it. So we had a good discussion. I was taken back that Yankee joined. So thank you for showing up, Yankee, and giving us your opinion.
QWeb sent me the link, but I wasn't here, so I just got it when I got back.
Well, awesome. Thank you for showing up.
I had to go pick up a new Chiappa Rhino.
That's what, like 10 or 12 for you?
You have like a whole herd of rhinos now?
5. I've got 5 of them now.
So are you too good for the bull, Taurus?
Do you have a white rhino now?
I've got one of all 3 barrel sizes, or all 4 barrel sizes, and I got 2 2-inches. So there's 4 barrel
fantastic.
sizes. I got all those, and then I got 2 of the 2-inch. So I've got 5 now.
So
Two
what
of them
happened to
are-
the love for the Taurus?
Huh?
What happened to the love for the Taurus?
I never loved Tauruses. I was just
It was the
poor.
80s.
Yeah, I was poor. It was the late 80s, and I was poor. I was at that time, probably making an E3 or an E4 salary. So
There was a lot fewer options back then, too.
There was full auto options back then.
I had a 686 in the 80s, and I was not rich. It was my first job out of college.
yeah, I was super poor. I was
Oh,
a military man.
All right. I also want to thank GWebs for showing up.
You bet. Thanks for the invite.
Thank you, Dano.
Glad to be here.
Sean, we finally got you in one.
Thanks for getting a message to me.
Well, I'm just going to email you from now on.
That'll work.
Smeggy.
What?
Thanks for showing up, and thank you for bringing us this topic tonight. I had no idea what I was going to do tonight. And then you were like, we need to do this for Hit or Miss. And I'm like, finally, we have something to do.
Yeah. Thanks for indulging me. I mean, I like to go down the rabbit hole every once in a while with all sorts of crazy stuff. So
It's a good topic.
Well,
That was a good topic.
it was a good topic. We went at it from all sides, and I got to hear all sides of the conversation. So
And I will say, this is something we've done before in chats. I actually did it years ago. But we need to start redoing more of the old chats because we forget a lot of people did not hear the old chats. There's new people every day who still want to hear the basic opinions on basic subjects.
Well,
Yeah, I was thinking you should do one of these in left to center because we don't agree at all on this one.
well. Anyways, if anyone has any ideas for any shows for Hit or Miss or topics you'd like us to cover or anything, just shoot me an email on the Hit or Miss page. Yeah, just click the email thing and let me know what you think. Thank you guys for listening. This was Hit or Miss.